Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how I made these extra attachments for my Clone Trooper armor. The templates for both of these pieces will be available in the description on the same RPF page where I put my armor templates and the blaster templates too. Real quick, I just wanted to say thank you for 2K subs. I really enjoy making content like this, and it's because of you guys that I'm really able to do that. So if you haven't subscribed already, feel free to do that. Also, in case you don't know, I'm on Instagram. You can check me out there as well. I also have a Patreon account if you'd like to support me on there as well. I'd be grateful for any help that you guys can offer. Both of those links are on my YouTube channel homepage, so go ahead and check them out if you'd like. But anyway, let's get on with the build. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is print out the template. The one that I have here is going to be a little different than the one that I post later, just because this is my rough draft version. But the one that you download is going to be much more organized and the lines will be more clearly defined. For the shoulder piece, you're also going to need a long stick. I used this paintbrush end just because it was kind of old and it was already about the right length. The foam that I'm going to use for the antenna on the shoulder is 5mm foam. I'm going to stack two of them up together so it'll be a little thicker. If you guys have already made the shoulder piece, then you'll want to make sure that this curve on the shoulder antenna matches the curve of the shoulder plate, because you don't want the curve to be off a little bit. It might end up sticking out in some areas that you don't want. But after you cut out the template, you're going to trace it onto the foam using a Sharpie and then cut it out with just an X-Acto knife. Try to keep the knife straight up and down because you don't want to bevel any of the pieces here. It's supposed to be just at a 90-degree angle. After that, you want to make sure that you locate where you want to stick in the antenna part. I accidentally started gluing first before I cut the hole where the antenna is going to go, so make sure you don't do that. Make sure you cut like a trench area, as I'll show later, for the antenna piece, and then you can go back and glue them together with the antenna inside it. Okay, so as you can see here, I went ahead and cut a channel in using the Dremel tool. I'm going to do the same thing for both sides and then sandwich them in between the antenna. I'm going to use a mixture of hot glue and super glue for this because I want to firmly seat it in there, but that is totally optional and you can use only hot glue or only super glue, whatever you have. So for this next piece, I'm just going to wrap a little bit of 2mm foam around the tip of the antenna just to make it more show accurate. I just wrapped the 2mm foam around the tip using super glue, and then once that was done, I cut off the excess. So after that's done, we have the completed shape of the shoulder antenna, and if you intend to have this permanently on your armor, this is where you can skip the next step, because this step is going to be taking the piece on and off using magnets. Basically, I'm just going to put magnets on the bottom of the antenna piece and then underneath of the shoulder armor, and whenever I want to take it off, I can just pull it off. If you intend to make this a permanent attachment, then you can just super glue it or hot glue it straight to the shoulder armor. In order to get those holes on the bottom of the antenna piece, all I did was take a Dremel with the small bit attachment and I drilled a little hole into the bottom and then just gradually adjusted it so the magnets would sit inside of it, and then I just glued it in place. In order to find where to put the other magnets underneath the shoulder armor, I just put it on and sort of lined it up, and then I took a Sharpie and marked where the magnets would be glued in place. I also glued the magnets together just for a stronger connection, but this is totally optional. So right now I'm testing the connection point of the magnets. I want to make sure that the ends are the ones that connect together and not the ones that push each other away. You want to make absolutely sure that both sides of the magnets attract each other, because you don't want to put this on and have it not fit. And in order to secure the magnets to the foam, basically what I'm doing is putting some hot glue and super glue down around the area where I mark, and then I will actually stick the magnet on the mark and then put the opposing magnet in place on the other side, so the magnet will attract itself to the foam and the glue will stick a lot faster. Okay, so now that we have that all in place, we're just doing a test fit here, and afterwards we will paint it. In order to paint it, we first have to seal it, and I'm going to do that using Mod Podge, and I'm just going to brush this on. It's not necessary to brush on sealant over the wooden piece because it's not really absorbent like the foam is. So now that the sealant has dried, I'm going to start painting it. I'm just going to use white for the base part and then gray for the antenna part. For the antenna piece, I decided to paint it a few times to give it a few layers because the wood color was still seeping through after just one coat. After I let that dry, I decided to weather it a little bit using some gray and black paint. This was done by taking a paintbrush and just sort of brushing along the edges just to make them a little bit more pronounced. And that's all for the antenna piece. Now I'm going to show you how I made the little ammo pouch on the side of the arm. First, just like the other piece, I took the template that I made and cut that out, then traced it onto foam the same way as the antenna. This time for the box section, I decided to use a thicker foam. This is 1/2 inch thick foam. And for the strap piece, I decided to use 2mm foam. For the strap section, I just decided to cut a long piece of 2mm foam out. I didn't measure it exactly because I decided I was going to fit it exactly to the arm piece, and that way all I would have to do is cut off the excess bits later. For the little raised section on the strap piece, I decided to also make that out of 2mm foam, and I would just stack it on top of the 2mm foam strap that I already had. This is a trickier piece to cut out just because it's so thin, but once you cut that out, you can just glue it on top of the 2mm strap that I made earlier using super glue. For the lid section of the little pocket pouch that I made, what I'm going to do is take some 2mm foam and just wrap it around the top and glue it on with super glue. When you print out the template and cut those pieces out, you'll want to make sure this lid piece is a little bit longer just so you can wrap it around the top of the foam, however thick the foam is you decide to use. So now I'm going to cut off the extra length that I cut for the strap. All I'm going to do is wrap it around the bicep armor and then mark where I want to cut, and then I'll cut it straight. I glued the two edges of the strap piece together just using super glue. I then decided to attach the magnet to the same place where the seam line is, and that's also where I'm going to put the pouch on top of. Since the magnet sticks out a little bit more, I decided to grind a little hole into the back of the pouch just to better seat it onto the strap. At this point, I needed to round the pouch piece a little bit more, so I used a heat gun to heat up the foam pouch, and then afterwards I bent it a little bit so that it curved around the bicep armor. Just like we saw with the antenna piece, I'm going to paint on some sealant before we paint this piece. Okay, now that that's dry, it's time to paint. And for the strap section, I decided to paint the top ring sections gray, and I'll just leave the inner section white. One thing that I forgot to do earlier was add this little bit of detail to the bottom section of the pouch. I'm going to do that now by just cutting this out, shaving it in half with the knife, and then putting it back in place. This is a technique that I learned from Andrew DFT, and it really does help bring out a lot of the detail on a piece, so it's really easy to do and just adds a whole lot more detail. So now I'm going to move on to painting the pouch section. I'm going to paint the main body white and just the top part gray and the little detail at the bottom gray as well. I will say that I had to do a few coats of paint just to make the color more uniform. Now this is a little Republic symbol that I printed out. I thought it would make a nice little addition. I just literally printed it out on paper and cut it out in a circle with some scissors, and I'm just going to glue it straight on since it's already a white background. I'm going to glue it on with some super glue. I'm just going to smooth it out so that when I push it down, there won't be any glue that pops out around the edges. And after that, I just line it up with the center of the pouch section and just kind of guess where it would go and then push it down. Now I'm going to glue it down on top of the strap section that we made earlier. And now I'm going to do a test fit on the actual bicep. Everything seems to be lining up just fine, so I'm going to glue in the magnet as well. Now I'm going to weather this piece in the same way that I weathered the antenna, just with some black paint that I brushed along the edges to bring out that detail. And that's basically it. If you wanted to do another step, you could spray some clear coat over top of this piece, but I decided not to. I just don't think it's that worth it. That's pretty much the entire build. What you can do is do the exact same thing for both sides if you want to. I know Commander Cody and Commander Wolf have their antenna on the left side of their shoulder, but I decided to put mine on the right side just because I also have a pauldron and I wanted to put both of them on at the same time. So you can customize it however you want. You can even put 2 antennas on both shoulders, just whatever you want to do. Now you have that option. The antenna may fall off from time to time just because it's on magnets, but it would be better to have it fall off and you can pick it back up and put it on again rather than having it break if it bumped into something. Again, you can just glue it down if you don't want to remove it at all. Okay, so that's all for this video. Be sure to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I plan to upload videos at least once a week, but I'll try to do more if possible. Once again, thank you to my Patreon supporters for allowing me to put out content like this and to be able to make a bit of a living off of it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.